Hello and welcome to the Brave Sound podcast. This is the show where we uncover the stories, processes, and worldviews behind New York City's most creative and artful musicians. Today's guest, the wonderful pianist Joe Block, is one of the most studied musicians I've ever met. Finest Newborn Jr., Teddy Wilson, Bill Evans, Barry Harris, and Thelonious Monk are just a few of the great pianists that Joe synthesizes into his playing. But make no mistake, Joe uses this history as fuel for innovation. He has performed or recorded with the Ari Honig Trio, Orrin Evans's Captain Black Big Band, Kurt Rosenwinkel, Wynton Marsalis, Joe Farnsworth, Jaleel Shaw, and very recently Peter Bernstein. He leads a quintet that has performed at such NYC venues as Jazz at Lincoln Center's famed Dizzy's Club, the Django, and many more. He co-founded the Philadelphia Ambassador Big Band while still in high school and has gone on to compose or arrange large ensemble music for the Juilliard Jazz Orchestra, Wynton Marsalis Septet, Jazz Orchestra of Philadelphia, and the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra. I've had the great fortune of knowing Joe as an incredibly inspiring peer, a face I always look forward to seeing, and a passionate Philadelphia sports fan. And so I am extremely, extremely excited to welcome to Brave Sound Podcast, Mr. Joe Block.
That was a nice intro.
You like it? You like it?
Thank you. Very nice.
So I wanted to start with, I don't know, it's kind of funny starting with these accolades and bios. I think it's important to get people's attention and to know like the real work that's being done. But with all these names of people you've worked with and the level of musicianship that you show, I think it's easy to make assumptions from the outside in. So I wanted to ask you, what's something about Joe Block that somebody might not assume just from reading your bio?
Wow. That's funny because I asked you what questions you were going to ask me and you didn't tell me. So this is now I got to think on the spot.
That's the point, right?
Yeah. I think I'm a very serious person. And I don't mean that in like a serious. I mean that way too, but just the stuff that I care about, I very much care about, and it dominates my mind and my life. And when I was little, people would say like I don't smile enough when I play. Always have the serious look, but like for me, it just has always been the kind of headspace I needed to get into to play or write music. So, through all the things I've been able to do in my life, I try to retain some sort of level of seriousness and integrity to the music, regardless of what style it is or who I'm playing with. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely noticed. I mean, I've always known you to be serious about the music, but maybe it's because we go back, like 4 years now or 5 years or something like that.
You're right.
At this
Right.
point, I can see through it a little bit, like the face, and I know that you're like, you. I guess from the outside looking in, it could look intimidating, or like he should smile more when he plays or something. But I've always known you to be very warm and personable. But you're very serious about getting business done, right? Yeah, and that's something I've always admired about you.
Oh,
I guess a follow-up question. Back when I first met you, I was trying to think. I think it was at the Brubeck Institute audition out in California where we first met. I was trying to think if there was anything before that. But that was like several years ago when we were both seniors in high school auditioning for schools and things. And back then, I remember actually talking to you in the airport, and you were talking about really heavily about Barry Harris that you were studying at the time, and Bill Evans. And then as I've gotten to see you, grow and become who you are today, in college I started hearing a lot of these other influences like Thelonious Monk and Teddy Wilson and all these people that you're studying in school. And nowadays we've had many conversations about like Kurt Rosenwinkel's music, Ambrose's music, Gerald Clayton,
Right.
Jacob Collier. Could you describe to me uh, kind of your history of influences, what caused them to change,
Yeah.
and how that's affected your
Yeah.
music?
Yeah. I think as my ear matures, and I don't mean ear and like what chord is that? Just awareness about the music and openness about what I like. Um, the timeline has gotten closer to today, and now I find myself going back. So it's just a constant boomerang, I think.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, in high school, I started playing piano when I was 2, and I played classical piano for about 10, 11 years. Um, and then I switched to studying jazz at 13, so middle school. And at the time, I was studying at the Philadelphia Clef Club, which was still is a great education hub in Philadelphia that Jalil Shaw and McBride and Justin Faulkner, a lot of great musicians have gone and studied there, Manuel Wilkins. So I was kind of burst into this rich musical environment in Philly that was being aided and coupled by all the clubs that, and all the music that was happening at Chris's and other spots. And so I kind of was in that environment from an early age, and wasn't checking out as much music being released today as much. Um, and maybe even was close to it at that time. Just in high school, I was just love swing. I love swinging. I love Oscar Peterson trio. I love Bill Evans. Bud Powell, Charlie Parker. Just still love today. But over time, I've grown to love the non-swinging stuff too. Not that it's any worse or better. And from a compositional standpoint, because I think for me, composition is very important to my artistic vision and the music I want to eventually release. I admire a lot of the modern composers that are able to incorporate older traditions and older styles into their playing very visibly. So, Kurt, Gerald Clayton, Wynton, all these people that are just very modern, but not isolated from a lineage.
Yeah.
So so over the last kind of 4 years, I've really been doing a lot of different things, but my ears have been way more open to different styles and different influences, and being okay with that, not being told what to listen to, not being pressured into only checking this stuff out, because that can happen in school, that can happen in social media. So I think as we all get older and we get more mature and experienced, so we're able to even go back to stuff that we didn't even find killing, or even extremely simple things, that maybe aren't super advanced, but tell a story well, or are just great at communicating a single idea. Like all these things we can really draw from. And I'm very happy that I have such great friends that are always showing me. I mean, you guys can agree with this. Or we're always showing each other, check this album out, check this out. That can be overwhelming too. But it's great that we're all so supportive of each other in that way.
Can you? I mean, you describe it as maturing and growing up, and you're opening up to these ideas. But can you think of any maybe experiences on the bandstand or conversations you've had with people that changed your mind about a certain artist or non-swinging stuff?
Yeah. One of the defining moments was I saw the Ambrose Akinmusire quintet at the Village Vanguard 3 years ago. Completely changed that was like a node for me that completely changed my vision in terms of band leading and composing, and just how he was just conducting himself on stage and how he was incorporating the members of his ensemble. That was really defining to me. And a lot of it is just, like I said before, like the mindset, right? So it's going in, being open, And I know that sounds kind of cliche, but just literally being open, physically and emotionally open. Like, I'm
Certainly.
ready for this music to enter my body. I'm ready for this music, even if it's not something I like. I'm ready for this music to touch me.
Could
So yeah,
you
yeah.
maybe can you be more specific about what the way that Ambrose conducted himself on stage and the music being open, like
Yeah.
what really drew you into that?
Yeah, there was a high level of seriousness on the stage. I don't think he even spoke.
Mm.
And there was just such a high level of musicianship and but also just so cool. Like everyone was just so relaxed. It's that balance that I really admired. Nobody had sheet music. He didn't even count off the song. He would just start playing. Um,
Wow.
and and a lot of my music is kind of written that through composed kind of way with interludes and stuff, and a lot of kind of freedom within a structure, like both of those. And he's definitely influential for me in that regards because a lot of his music and other people's music flows almost like a suite or like a coming more from like the European classical tradition in terms of the writing and the forms being used. Maybe not the rhythms, but the forms.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so that's kind of more specific.
Cool. Uh, this makes me think of, an important figure in our music, and an important figure for both of us has been Wynton Marsalis. I mean, I know he's had a great effect, and he's given you a lot of amazing opportunities, and rightfully so. But he has a very specific way that he sees music and quality of music. For I don't know if he would say it. He definitely wouldn't say it like that. But has he had
Right.
any impact on swaying your tastes? Is maybe when you were
Yeah.
younger or now that you're older?
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. He I wouldn't be here without him. Definitely. And I think a lot of people could say that.
Right.
The direct and indirect impact he's had on me and a lot of my other friends is just so widespread. And he was like the first person I kind of got introduced to when I first came to New York when I was like 16 to I wrote a piece for his orchestra, Jazz Lincoln Center.
From
And
the Essential Ellington competition. That one?
exactly, right. So
Beautiful.
that was like my introduction to Jazz Lincoln Center and to New York jazz. And I think in high school I was definitely more in line with his views um, about the music, and I revered him so much, and I still do. But as I got older, I started to differ a little bit. Um, and it's not like he loves disagreement. He loves
Yeah.
this. I've had many conversations with him about our different definitions of things. But I think we need somebody like him that's going to be a pillar, right? That's going to lay down a law, not say the
Right.
law, but lay down a law on which people can go up against and use, not go up against in a combative way, but use that as like
Well,
a
often it ends
benchmark.
up being like that. I don't think that's
Right.
the
Often
intent.
does.
But you're absolutely right. A law. I like the way you put that. It's like it's a stake in the ground that says like you're here or there. You're Democrat or Republican. You're this or that. It makes things a bit more of a binary decision, which is not um, right or wrong, and it could have negative impacts as well. But and it definitely could cause conflict. But his point of view has been very influential on our entire industry. Yeah, Mike,
Right.
have you listened to his talks or been influenced by these kind of ideas we're talking about?
Yeah. Mm, um, someone else that reminds me of Wynton a lot, especially the way you were talking about him, is Kenny Washington, and he also teaches at Juilliard. And when you were saying he kind of puts up a rule, it or a law. It's pretty similar in Kenny Washington, just that he is quite, I would say, into conserving the traditional way of playing jazz on the drum set, and recently I've been much more into into more of the innovation concept and trying to find my own unique self into it. But of course, there's nothing, you can't innovate if you don't know the past as well. So it's a fine balance with the two. But yeah, I think that guys that upholds that in the music are super important for just keeping integrity of the past, and they're just historians, really historians of the music. And there's a lot of them. It's not just Wynton Marsalis, but Kenny Washington and even like Questlove, another drummer who knows a ton of history. But
Right.
it's yeah, and also Joe, before we started recording, you said that you're studying American Studies in Columbia, and I think that it shows me how much you're into the history as well, and even on your bio you talk about these influences you have. So I wanted to ask you, how much do you, maybe down the line, I don't know if you think about it like this, but down the line, would you rather be considered an innovator on the instrument or in music, or more of a rooted jazz musician?
Yeah, it's very hard to answer that question, um,
Yeah.
because it sets up a certain binary that I don't think anybody wants to answer.
Yeah.
And I think some of the most traditional musicians are the most innovative, and some of the most innovative people are extremely traditional. I think Wynton is extremely innovative and extremely traditional and modern. I think Wynton is all three,
Right.
you know.
Can,
And
can I ask you, sorry to
yeah,
interrupt, but do you think Wynton would have the kind of aura and revere that he has if he had never had that period of youth with Blakey and those kind of
right.
like Young Lion records where he's just taking no prisoners and
Right. I
playing
love
all
that
of the
era.
right.
That's
I
fun.
think part of what makes his later maturity seem so restraintful is because he had this other period and you saw what he
Right.
used to be
Right.
about.
Right.
How do you think that? Do you think he would still
Yeah.
be?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, a lot of people I know, that's some of their favorite records of his come from that era. So just in terms of the music itself, it's just such great music. Forget his philosophy on the music, just the sound of it is really killing. So that definitely, I think, that was a starting point, or not the starting point, but that was a middle point for him.
Mm,
But yeah, in terms of Mike's question, I'm definitely, I think I try to shy away from trying to be innovative. I think when you try to be innovative, you end up lacking substance or lacking a vision. If you're like, oh, I'm going to intentionally reject some things and try to be myself. I try to use my influences to aid my innovation. And in terms of my band leading and my writing, it would probably be considered modern, whatever that means. And I played at Dizzy's last year with my quintet. All that music's up on SoundCloud.
right.
Um,
Yeah. On your
uh,
website.
in terms of, it's different what we practice and what we put out, right? So, I could practice, a Bud Powell transcription, then I could put out something else, right? And I think some of the best people like Brad Meldau, Sullivan Fortner, extremely versatile piano players, right? So that's kind of my, to answer your question, Mike, really awful answer, but both. The answer is both for me. So I very much want to be, as a leader, maybe able to juggle both and be considered as someone who successfully did that.
Right.
I want to just say a quick follow-up because the reason I asked that question was because recently I've been researching drummers that have just when they were coming up and trying to find a voice on the instrument and just trying to master their craft, their mindset was, I don't want to play like anyone else.
Right.
So they wouldn't transcribe. They would just try to make up grooves that made them who they are. And nowadays, some of them, two names I can think of off the bat are Mark Juliana, who said that in an interview, who plays with Brad Meldau, and also Zach Hill. And both those guys would say that when I would practice and I would hear myself playing something that I hear other drummers play, I would stop and I would try to like clear that from my mind. But there's another school of thought of Kenny Washington, for instance, talks about just learning to play like everybody. He said that he would just try to play like every jazz drummer when he was like around my age, and eventually your own style takes place. So the reason I asked you that about just if you want to be an innovator or being very very well rooted is because I want to get more to your process of how you practice and also how you compose, and if you think along one of those lines more than the other.
Great. Yeah. Ultimately, I just want my music to touch people and affect people and make a statement. Whether it gets considered one label or the other is not up to me.
Mm-hmm.
Not even really, I don't really care what it even gets labeled as. Ultimately, if people like it, you know. In terms of my writing, that is when I feel like I'm the most myself. And maybe that's why my writing is maybe more modern than stuff I practice or the stuff in school that we're exposed to. But I feel like my writing is when I've kind of let my guard down and let what I tell myself I'm influenced by go, and I just start playing or singing melodies into my phone that I later work on. And so that's kind of my writing process. It's very kind of organic. I don't have like a bullet list of things. Oh, bass line, harmony. You know, it just a lot of the stuff I just sing into my phone. Maybe a month later I'll go into Sibelius and write out what I sung, and that's my seed, right? That's my seed. And sometimes I'm working on things that I try to incorporate into the song. You know, certain rhythm or certain harmonic idea, but I try to let the song tell me what it needs. And I'm very big on editing, going back and fixing things and just refining things, even including things in the song you heard other people play on your tune.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because that's some of the most real present moment things. But you know, someone decided to play something, you love it so much, you just put it right in.
That happened a lot in history.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
a lot, maybe
Duke
not
was
like
huge on that.
Codified on paper, but definitely with all these great bands that we look up to, like stuff happened on tour and then they kept happening, right? And that was kind of what happened. But I mean,
yeah,
we
it's great. It's great. I feel like a lot of that is lost, but that's a really nice thing, is to incorporate your peers into your music. And I would say another thing that kind of binds my tunes together, my writing, is a pretty deep harmonic sense. So that's something that I've heavily shed the last couple of years. And
ever since I've known you, man.
Yeah, but even deeper.
Yeah.
How to use harmony, tell a story, and affect people. Whether that's, you know, Nelson Riddle, you know, Jacob Collier, Herbie Hancock, Teddy Wilson, Art Tatum. You know, the spectrum just goes all over. Wagner, Debussy. So that's one aspect of the music that I love, and a lot of my tunes use that as maybe one of the central components of the narrative. Um, Not that other things aren't important, but that's just, as a piano player at perfect pitch, I'm always hearing shit in my head. So I'm always trying to, get it out and see how I can manipulate pitch and sound. And not a way that's overbearing, because I really hate harmony geeks and harmony nerds and people that are like, oh, look this chord. It's like, it's sometimes it's better to play a triad. Really, just play 3 notes. That says a lot more than 8 million notes. So I think this past year I've been really working on refining the knowledge I have and the skills I have in the harmonic world to use maybe use 30% of it or 40% of it, and use that 40% to tell the story the best.
Yeah.
And that's just touching on one aspect of the music. There's so many other things, form, melody, rhythm, all these comping.
Yeah, I mean, it's so refreshing to hear that, you have these techniques and studies and practices, but your end goal when you're writing, like you said, is to affect people. And this going back a little bit, I really love the way you worded, you were saying if you try too hard to be an innovator, you might make something of no substance, right?
Right.
And I think that's so true. I think originality is so overrated. Like, you can make an arrangement of, I don't know, Lush Life in 64/16, or that doesn't even make any, like 37/16, but like, and maybe you're the first person who's ever done it, you're original, but that doesn't make it good, right? So in all these, it really, all it comes down to is like what the listener hears and what type of effect the music has on them. So who are the composers and the albums, maybe the songs or the artists, that when you listen to them, deeper than technical virtuosity or any type of thing, their music just affects you in the way that you would like to affect others?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we have to think about that question more. Less about the technique, the theory, right? Just pure communication. What are you feeling? Okay, this is the feeling I have on this album. How can I pivot to this listener? And now I'm the artist. That's a really good relationship. I mean, my room, it's hard to see with my camera on me, but I have a lot of posters on my wall of people that I look up to, and inspire me. Miles Davis, Bill Evans, Billie Holiday. And that's just 3 people that I think have an extremely emotional side to their music, a deep kind of spectrum of emotions that they can bring out of people. I mean, just to list some albums that do that for me, Bill Evans, Live at the Village Vanguard. I've been listening to Kurt Rosenwinkel, Star of Jupiter lately. Any Art Tatum solo piano. Herbie Hancock, Speak Like a Child. It's great. Duke Ellington, John Coltrane, any Coltrane ballads. All this stuff that just has a deep kind of just knife through your heart vibe, which I love. And then there's all the classical music. I love Wagner's music. I love Debussy's music.
Holst, you studied as well.
Holst. I got to write a jazz version of one of his movements for Terrell Stafford's big band. So that was cool. I did
Neptune?
Venus.
Oh, Venus.
Venus. So yeah, that's definitely a lot of the stuff I like. It hits me in that certain. It's like a solemn, serious kind of quiet way. You know what I mean? I love music like that. That just here it is. So maybe I think lately I've been trying to listen to other things, just completely other things, just to just balance it out.
Like lately, like totally not jazz, not classical?
Yeah,
Is that what
yeah,
you mean?
no, yeah, yeah. Other things. I was listening to some stuff at the gym this morning, listening to some R&B, some funk stuff. Um, just because it's important. It's important as much as we practice individual skills. The group, right? That's such a lost and a hard skill to I think curate is the group dynamic. And I've been in Ben Wolf's ensemble this year, Juilliard, great bass player and composer, and he's so big on just groove, right? And just not reacting, just just playing the ride cymbal for 5 minutes and not reacting, just setting up a great groove where Philly Joe and PC and Wynton Kelly play, right? That were Sam Jones and Art Taylor, Jimmy Cobb. Just that certain groove mentality that I think you can really learn from in pop music and R&B music. Just great grooves. Maybe not the most harmonically advanced music, but the groove is so central. And that's something I really want to focus on this year is the groove of the music and playing and just knowing what you need to do to create that groove. That's a really hard thing, especially in the rhythm section. We're kind of taught to like be on like crazy react mode all the time, which can work. That's more of like a Herbie the way he played with Miles. He didn't play a lot, but when he did, he was kind of doing a lot of reaction. But the way Wynton Kelly comps or Red Garland comps, it's more like a blanket upon which other people can express themselves. It's really hard to get that because it's hard to practice that on your own. But I've been using these combo rehearsals we have to work on that skill of just playing the role, playing the part, and functioning as a rhythm section to swing. If that's the only goal, meeting that goal. That's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Yeah, I saw. Sorry, just real quick. It's not even a question,
yeah,
just like a tangent. I saw Jimmy Cobb play maybe year and a half ago at Smoke Jazz Club, and crazy tipping. One of the like you were saying, one of the just most consistent grooves I've heard. It just like was such a bed to play on. It felt like, and one of the he had two rides, and this was like the horn player's ride. And this was like the piano player's ride. On every single song, this is what he did. And it was like the decision was already made. Like, yes.
You have to embody so much groove and swing in yourself that you can just do that, and that can be enough.
Yeah.
Limited amount of filling, limited amount of changing the overall kind of sense of groove.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that because I thought that was a pretty powerful experience to hear.
Great.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I wish I saw that at Smoke. I heard when he was playing last year, but I want to ask you because of course during quarantine and around the past year, musicians have unfortunately not been able to play together like nearly as much, and you just mentioned that you have combos, but how would you go about practicing playing in a group and achieving that group sound by yourself? I know it's hard, but are there any tactics you use in your head to try to replicate the feeling?
Yeah, I mean the chief way is playing with other things, whether that be roommates, which we can do when we live together, whether that be playing with records, God forbid backing tracks. But I think this was a good time for us to all reset and fill in some holes in our playing that we needed to fill in, or not even in our playing, in ourselves or in our playing, whatever we need to fill in. Just go back and address some areas of work, things that need work or things that don't even need work, but you want to get better at. Like, I really love, I love working on things I'm not good at, but I also love making things that I'm good at great, right? So taking things that I already can do well and just starting from ground zero on them. and saying, okay, I know how to do this certain thing this way, but what if I approach it from a different avenue? What if I check out how this person harmonizes chords? What if I check out how this person plays stuff, stuff that very rudimentary stuff, but the fundamentals can be very manipulated in different ways that if you address the small things, the bigger picture can have a really big impact. So yeah, I mean, it's been hard to play with people for sure, but I mean, I've been lucky. I've been able to do a couple live stream gigs here and there, and I'm very excited to play on Sunday with you guys. And obviously school, we can do some stuff there. But yeah, it's going to be great when we all can do it again safely, and it's going to be a burst of energy.
Maybe we could talk about Sunday a little, and the other two musicians that you have, Christain McGhee and Jack Aylor. Maybe you could talk about how you met them, how you found your chemistry with them, and what kind of music you guys will be playing.
Great. Two unbelievable human beings and musicians. Jack, I met when I was studying at Columbia. He also went to Columbia. Now he's at MSM. But he went to Columbia. He's 2 years older than me, and phenomenal bass player, just so a rock, and a great ear. And that's what I look for in a bass player. Just great, just being, And Christain also is that, but Christain takes more risks, and you guys both know Christain, just an incredible all-around musician and instrumentalist, multi-instrumentalist. He's playing drums on Sunday, but I love playing with Christain. We have a very nice chemistry, him and I. It's almost like we can put in a different bass player, and we'll still have a chemistry. We do that a lot. We play with different bass players.
Right.
I admire Christian's ability to take risks, but not overpower the vibe. Like there's always a certain groundedness to his playing, that whatever he's doing, I always feel like I'm at home, and I feel like we kind of have a similar approach to reaching something in the music. I'm very big on like reaching a higher ground when I play. So I feel like we both have that connection. And as a trio, we haven't done too many gigs together as a trio. We've played. Jack did one of the nights at Dizzy's last year. I had another bass player play the other nights, but that got to play on that, and we do some sessions with other horn players. So I'm excited to get back with those guys, and I have a good variety of music. Going back to what Michael asked me at the beginning, that I think kind of reflects who I am as a musician and how I see myself fitting into this lineage. Maybe about 2 or 3 of them are originals. One is a brand new song I haven't even played yet, so I'm really excited to play that one. And I'm gonna play a Peter Bernstein tune.
Nice.
That I actually got to play with him last week, and a Kurt Rosenwinkel tune I got to play with Kurt. So I want to honor these people I've been able to learn from.
Yeah.
And in a trio setting, and a couple standards, a McCoy tune, I think, a Monk tune. So I think I'm really just taking a little bit from everywhere. Just people that I'm influenced by, the people I play with, and my music.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of 3 categories.
Here's a funny contrast. Like you said at the beginning of this interview that you were told when you were younger that you don't smile enough when you play, right? And then Christian, I always used to hear, it's like, wow, man, he smiles so much when he's plays. Like when he plays, he's such a bundle of joy. And there's something to that. And you're talking about this chemistry that you guys have, and he's a risk taker, and that but you have the same common goal. I really like the way you articulated that. So then it leads me to really want to ask you, do you approach this chemistry between people? Do you approach playing with Kurt Rosenwinkel differently than you approached playing with Peter Bernstein or Joe Farnsworth or some
right.
These type of things?
Yeah, I've only gotten to play with those guys once. But Kurt twice, but one weekend, and I hope I get to do it again. That was one of my favorite gigs I've ever played. Um, and it forced me to elevate my kind of awareness for the music. But I always try to retain somewhat of myself. Like I'm very big on doing what is needed for the music. Like with Kurt, I had to study how to play piano in a modern jazz quartet, which is a very specific skill, and not many people do that. Like Aaron Parks was on that record, Star of Jupiter, and he's someone that does that. So I was checking out what he does, and so on a gig like that, definitely don't think I was trying to do too much, but I also wanted to honor the fact that I was playing with him, and he did want to play with me, with some recommendations. He did want to play with me. And I didn't want to just completely go back into my shell and be like, okay, now I'm going to play my role, which, it's good to play the role, but you play the role through your lens. Right. And that's what the theme of this music is. We've been talking about so many musicians today, so many drummers, same instrument, right? But different lens through which you're playing the role of the drums. And I think I try to approach, like with Peter last week, it was more about, her hard bop, swinging, grooving, not getting in the way too much. And that was something that kind of went in my mind. I don't know if I executed those things. I hope I did. Who knows? It's good to listen back and see if you executed the things you wanted to execute. But going in, those were my kind of thoughts. But when I was playing, I wasn't really thinking too much about those. Just kind of enjoy the moment and have fun.
Right, but you're informed by the extensive study that you've done. Like you said, you were checking out Aaron Parks and listening to the records before the gig. That's like somewhere in there, so that you don't. Hopefully on the gig you don't have to be like trying to do this. It's just.
And that's an extremely uncomfortable environment when you're in. I've been in that before, and the Kurt gig was probably the most prepared I've ever been for a gig.
I remember you were studying, man.
I was just looking at a chart. Let's see if I can find it. But I was looking at a chart that I have to arrange for my combo at Juilliard, and these are like the notes I made. This is a song called Heavenly Bodies on Star of Jupiter. This is all the notes I made, like just so much specific things. Like, okay, this is the voicing that Aaron Parks played. These are the counter lines that he played. And then it was up to me in the moment, going back to even like the pillar idea. Like, this is the pillar that is laid down in this music. I can either reinforce that pillar, or I can make a new pillar. I can make it not even a pillar at all. I can play nothing. But it's just the knowledge that there is a pillar that I want to get in everything I do. Knowledge that something exists, and the decision to do it or not to do it, and the ability to execute it if I do want to execute. That's a great kind of mentality that I'm trying to get through in like as many different ways as possible. And
it's just the biggest cliche. You have to know the rules to break the rules, but what you were just saying, it goes in line with that a lot. And
it's like a very Wynton type of, like, he's so anti-ignorance in every way of
exactly,
in terms of history, in terms of like knowledge of society, in terms of the music, like,
right.
That's I would say one of his tenets. So we actually do have an audience question. I'm not sure how to say this name. If you know this person, correct me. Evgeny Sidorov? Do you know this person?
I do not.
Okay, so thanks for tuning in, Evgeny. She says, thanks for mentioning combos. Have you collaborated / performed live with musicians from totally remote locations? Did you use any platform or service?
Well, it's funny. I know you guys are big into all that technology stuff. Maybe you guys should answer this, but I haven't done anything in real time. I know, Austin, you were talking to me about this, how to do that. But I've done a fair amount of remote recordings I have a keyboard here, um, and I have Logic and all the tools I need. So I've been able to do a lot of stuff through school, but also a lot of stuff outside of school. And it's good. I don't love it. I think it's not really what I think the music is. It's kind of an approximation of it that can work in some settings, but you completely lose the interactive part of it, which is the music.
Mm-hmm.
I love interacting musically with people, and it's hard to do that over Logic when you're layering
Yeah.
versus layering this way, right? But it's cool. It forced me to kind of get my technology chops together. I'm actually taking a class right now about how to use Logic.
Good. Good.
So
Great. I'm glad they have
yeah,
that. Yeah.
Is that in
great.
Juilliard?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
The
wow.
elective class. Yeah.
It's funny. What I hate about the remote, like non-real time stuff is when they're trying to like fake it. Like
Mm.
for like Walter Smith and Ben Wendell, they posted this duet where they were just playing totally on top of each other. They weren't trying to like make space for each other and like act like they were interacting. They were just trying something totally different. And then obviously there's this whole produced music world where that's all they do, and they're not faking it at all. That's what the real thing is, right? But then you
Right.
have these videos where we're playing quarter notes and we're trying to leave space for somebody to fill in later on the next Passover, and it's just like
Right.
it's just, no, just do something else. Just do something else. I don't know. For me, it just feels like disingenuous, but maybe I'm a bit opinionated about that.
No, I
Um,
hear you.
but any
Could you be more specific about? Wait, who was it? Ben Wendell and Joel Ross, you said?
no,
Those
no.
two.
Walter Smith the third and Ben Wendell, two tenor
Oh,
players. So they recorded just they were just playing on top of each, like they basically picked a tempo, a tune, and a key, and they
uh-huh.
just played like two choruses improvising, and then they just put them together, and they just wanted to see what it looked like, versus trying to fake accompany somebody that hasn't even recorded yet. It's kind of
Oh,
different,
yeah.
right? A different mindset. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about some of the technology that is available for remote playing. As Joe mentioned, we at Brave Sound we've already done this using it's an open source software called Jacktrip, developed by Stanford University. I think so. Now there's an organization called the Jacktrip Foundation, and they're working on some more user-friendly applications, and they're selling their own virtual studio boxes that are like, I believe they're like $150 or something like that on Amazon, and but you can do it on your own personal computer as well. It's fair warning, it's not a user-friendly process. It took Mike and I over a month, maybe a couple months to really get to the point where we can use it. And still, honestly, it's a bit of a hassle. But it's done some pretty cool things for me and Mike. Mike and I have been able to have a couple of rehearsals and play music in times where we weren't able to get together safely, or when we just wanted to save time. And it's allowed me to maintain a musical relationship with a friend of mine, a bass player who lives in Virginia, Chris Monson. We've been doing several recordings, even just was it last night or maybe the night before? I don't remember. Very
Last
recently,
night.
last night, yeah, we just did another recording session together. He was in Virginia, I was in New York, and the software we have it down. We have like all the presets and all the commands that we need to do. We just copy and paste. It takes us no time at all to hop on. But the initial setup, it involves a lot of things and a little bit of courage, frankly. But if you're interested, you can go to our website bravesound.org/jacktrip, and it has like a 3-hour masterclass that I did about how to set this up, the limitations of it, the prerequisites of it, pretty much everything you need to know. Um, okay, so there's another question, but she had a follow up. Is Jacktrip audio only or video as well? Jacktrip is audio only, but you can combine it with like a Zoom video call or a Skype video call. I've done that in the past, and it works. The video is not totally in sync, but the audio is what's important, and miraculously, the audio is pretty in time. And now we have a music question from Laredo Palayo Jr. He says, do you have any advice for acquiring jazz language? Sometimes it can feel a bit daunting and progress can be excruciatingly slow.
Wow.
What a question.
Jazz language. I think the idea of jazz language already setting yourself up for failure if you're just using that phrase. Because I think so much of the music is and isn't about lines, right? So going back to what I said about the collective, right, the ensemble, the language part of it addresses the melodic and harmonic aspects and rhythmic as well. But a lot of times when people learn lines, they kind of learn them in a vacuum. They kind of learn licks or they transcribe, and they kind of forget, and I was guilty of this, and I'm trying to get out of this, but forget about the phrasing and the articulation and the attack and the way that relates to the drums and the way that relates to the bass and that relates to the overall sound of all the instruments playing together. So yes, like, very important to be able to play, bebop or, whatever, be able to play over changes, but don't lose sight about the kind of macro level application of the language. Now, if we're talking about just how to acquire the language, not everybody transcribes, and people transcribe differently, whether it's notating it and seeing a visual version of it or just doing it by ear. Whatever works for you works for you. I don't want to say this is the way to do it, because I know I do it a different way than my friends do it. I don't even transcribe that much right now at this point in my life. I transcribe all the time in my head, but I don't write stuff out as much anymore. I used to do that a lot. But a lot of it is just slowing down and being okay with doing one thing at a time. So even asking that question is so hard to answer. Like I would rather you ask, how can I get from F7 to B flat? That's like a much more manageable question.
Yeah.
Right.
Then
so
how do I acquire the language, right?
Right. And that's like saying, how can I be a lawyer? It's like, okay, well, first I need to get this degree. I need to study these books. I think breaking it down to smaller components wherever you're studying is really important. And we all do this. We all do this. But whatever we're studying, going over the fundamental, having really good technique will help you have better language, right? Working on your ear will help you have better language. Having better rhythmic sense will give you better language. Having, all these things are a part of it that don't necessarily equate to, okay, I'm listening to this Joe Henderson solo, what can I steal from it? It's like, I think we need to have a more all-encompassing approach to language.
Right. Well, what you were saying about not studying lines in a vacuum, and then what does that line say in the context of what the drummer was doing and all this stuff, all this context, this makes me think a lot of Wayne Shorter, because man, this guy does not play like cliche bebop language at all. Like like you listen to Speak No Evil or Juju or any of these Wayne Shorter records, and he's not playing the traditional language, but what he's playing is profound, and it's swinging sometimes, and it's all contextual, and the same could be said for someone like Dewey Redman, Ornette Coleman, Don Cherry. Well, funny story that John Riley told me. John Riley, the drummer for the Village Vanguard Orchestra and many other people, also got to do a tour with Don Cherry, and he told me that Don Cherry, when they were on tour together, was constantly whistling Charlie Parker solos. He knew them all by heart. It was just very easy for him. They were all in his mind. He would just whistle them, right? But he never played like that, right? And John Riley asked him one time, he said, like, why do you never play this Charlie Parker language that you've clearly studied so much? And he's like, well, I can already hear that. I'm trying to play the stuff I can't hear yet. I might be misquoting a little bit, but
that's great.
That was the idea.
And that goes back to what we were saying before about the pillars and the knowledge and the decision not to do something, right? So, again, like recapping, like the stuff that we put out and the stuff that how we play doesn't necessarily equate to what we're thinking about, what we're practicing. I think commonly they're linked, but I don't think they should be.
I want to just make a quick comment to the question. I forget who asked it, but one piece of advice that I felt more comforted with was, let's say you were to compare your mastery of your instrument to Rome, right? Because in old times, Rome was a great city, you know, it had water ducts and a lot agriculture, whatever. So it was a technological haven. So two things that I heard were Rome wasn't built in a day, and all roads lead to Rome. So
together.
So yeah, so I mean, of course, there's some roads that you could take that may just take you like to across the ocean or something. You know, you have to be mindful of that. But I think that the more you're chipping away at what you do, and also I talk to Evan Sherman a lot, and he really believes in living with something. Like, you really have to live with the music, and he's true to his word, and he does Certainly. That all the time, you know, and that's what it takes. But just keep chipping away at what you love, and I know I'm doing that right now with music that really moves me, and I'm just trying to chip away at it, and it's slow, and yeah, but all roads lead to Rome, and Rome wasn't built in a day.
Thanks for that, Mike. That's awesome.
Great.
Let's
Great.
I know we're a little bit short on time, but I'd like to end with a topic that I know is very near and dear and passionate for, that Joe has a lot of passion for, is this Philadelphia community. We didn't take the traditional approach in this interview of like, when did you start playing music and on, so I'd like to come back so we do go there. You mentioned the Clef Club, this whole lineage of people like Jalil Shah and Emmanuel Wilkins, and way back further than that, and the mentorship that you've gotten at Chris's, and now you built this whole community that's known as the Philadelphia Ambassador Big Band. Like, you have a lot of ties to the city. Talk to me a little bit about what this city means to you. And
it's, you know, it's one of the great cities for music we have, for sure. One of the great cities for a young musician to grow up in. And there's a certain intimacy and familiarity and a certain community that I think isn't always achieved in New York, because it's just so vast. There's so many different circles and styles and people. So, you know, I just being able to learn from people like Boone and Byron Landum and you know, Levitt Hines and Anthony Tidd, all these people that I got to learn from, set me up with a very strong foundation for the music that I'm very grateful for, and I always go back to and try to keep learning or contribute to other students. And so, you know, the two main programs I did were very different. The Clef Club was dealing more with swinging stuff, but more traditional stuff. And the Kimball Center program, led by Steve Coleman's bass player Anthony Tidd, was dealing with very avant-garde original music. So maybe that's where I started to like both. of those.
Wow.
Not that they're that different, honestly, but they sound different sometimes. But I was kind of exposed to both of those, and both programs stressed the importance of the fundamentals and checking out records and stuff. So it was a really good foundation that I think those two programs, you go to any Philly musician now, probably came out of one or both of those.
Mm.
And so many of the great musicians we have today across genres are from Philadelphia, right? So great R&B musicians, great gospel musicians, great classical jazz musicians, and I'm very lucky to be a part of that community. I don't think I'm ever going to lose, that love I have for it.
Yeah.
Everyone tells me I talk about it too much, but it's
Never.
it's hard. It's hard.
Never
it's hard.
heard you
It's
talk about Philly.
it's just a part of me. It's a part of me, and even when I'm in New York, it's almost like a magnet when like people from Philly are playing. All the Philly people go and support them. It's like very funny.
Yeah,
But
and
it's really great. It's really great.
I'm really thankful that you've gotten to introduce me a little bit. I think I've only gone a couple of times, and I think both of them were to see you. Or I got to sit in with Pav on one show, and
Right. You
and
play
then
with
I
the
went to go
orchestra, right.
see you with Jaleel, and I
Right.
think there was another time I saw you at I don't even remember, but it's like every time you're the force that brings me there, and all the cats there, they welcome me with open arms, and they're so friendly, and they're a great hang, and it's amazing. It's beautiful.
Yeah. That's the other last kind of component of that is the big band that my friend and I started, called the Philadelphia Ambassador Big Band, which no longer performs due to coronavirus, but hopefully after we can get back. But that was a kind of community that combined people from the Clef Club, the Kimmel Center, from people that didn't do either of those, Temple University, a lot of just different communities that we were able to combine into one big band, which at the time I really loved big band music. And I was writing for it a little bit and playing Duke Ellington music and Count Basie music. And we got to play with Seamus Blake and Jalil Shaw and Larry McKenna and some great saxophone players.
Larry McKenna, man.
Yeah, no, it was really nice to kind of have a pretty large community of younger Philly musicians who were passionate about getting together for $30 a night and playing at Chris's and selling out. It was just fun, very fun time. I'm sure if we all got back together, we'd sound very different now, all with the different people we've been checking out and the skills we've learned between now and then. But that's a really nice community. Even if the band doesn't exist, I'm happy that the friendships are still there. So
Yeah, I take it back though. There's one topic I wanted to be sure to give you a chance to speak on, that I forgot about. The great Frank Kimbrough just passed away. Was it a couple weeks ago now? Has it even been that long? And I know you've you've gotten to know him better than most, and through your studies with him, and I'd love to give you a chance to speak to his impacts on you and on the scene.
Yeah, that was a very tough way to end a very tough year. I think he passed away the day before New Year's. Yeah, I mean, it's tough talking about Frank because you feel like everything he did was so personal to you, but at the same time, this is what he did for all his students. And he was such a beacon of kind of hope and inspiration, musical and not musical, for the entire Juilliard community and outside of the Juilliard community. But I was lucky to study with him for 3 years, and he really affected the mentality. Going back to our first questions about the music we listen to and what we're checking out, he was very into not being in boxes and he hipped us to so many different things like that otherwise we would not have been hip to at Juilliard.
Right.
And it was important to have someone like that there that just, he didn't have a super busy performance schedule. I think he was just kind of content with his life at the time, just teaching. He loved his students, so he thought of the students as his children. He always would say that. And he wasn't at a point in his life when he felt like he needed to perform a lot because he has so many amazing records out and has performed with so many amazing people. And he still was continuing to perform with Maria Schneider and Lee Konitz and some other great, luminaries. But I mean, I don't know anybody else that cared about students as much as him. Seriously, I really don't. And it's been tough going into the building, going into the room he taught me and like not feeling his presence. I mean, still feeling his presence, but not physically feeling his presence, seeing him. He has such a big impact, and he continues to have such a big impact. I don't think we're ever going to not feel his presence, even if he's not physically here. But yeah, thanks for asking about that, because that's been another tough area for all of us. No, and I encourage you guys to, and anybody else, to listen to his albums, because he has some very beautiful music.
That was going to be my next question. I mean, I hesitate to call him an unsung hero because I don't know if that gives him the credit he deserves, but I know him more from Maria's band and the stuff that he recorded with Dewey Redman. But well, before I ask the question, another thing that you said that really struck me is that he feels so personal, but he actually just kind of the way he was, right? And I only got to interact with him one time. He had no idea who I was. I just subbed in a rehearsal one time, and he gave me all sorts of things to listen to, all sorts of crazy Dewey Redman records. Told all these stories about being at Ornette's funeral, things like that, and just so giving to somebody who he had never met. So yeah, very thankful for everything he's done for everyone. But could you give us a couple of those recommendations of Frank Kimbrough's musical legacy?
Yeah. Solstice, great career album that he did. Just pulling up another one so I don't mispronounce it.
Right.
Solstice, and this other one called Lullaby. Lullaby, but with a blue in the middle.
Oh, okay.
Lullaby. Those are maybe probably my two favorite. And then the Maria Schneider stuff is hard to listen to from a streaming perspective because she doesn't put her music on streaming platforms. But he sounds great in all her records if people want to purchase those.
Yeah.
And he recently, before he passed, recorded a anthology of Thelonious Monk's music. Because a lot of the Monk stuff I love now, he showed me. So he was one of the leading scholars and pianists on how to play like Monk and know about Monk's life and his music. So if you guys want to check that out, it's Billy Drummond and Rufus Reed and Scott Robinson. It's a really amazing album, and it's just like how you go to Ella Fitzgerald to learn melodies of standards, you can now go to Frank Kimbrough's album to learn maybe a different way to play Monk's music, but still very authentic and original.
Yeah. And
a lot of integrity there, for sure.
Can't wait. Wow. Are you down to take one more audience question? I thought.
Yeah.
From Catherine George, how do you stay motivated to create when you're lacking creative ideas?
I don't really create when I'm lacking creative ideas. I don't see any issue with taking a break sometimes and letting your brain recharge and your creative tank recharge. Also a lot of the things that we get creative inspiration from aren't music. And that's almost better sometimes, whether it's a person that inspires us or a speech or a piece of art or a friend or a family member. There's other things that can inspire us. And we just to harken back, like being open to being inspired by things that aren't music. You know, being inspired by what I ate for lunch today. That might inspire a certain feeling in me that might push me to go to the piano and play. It's like a very organic thing. It's not something that I was like thinking about doing.
Right.
But it's been hard, coming up with. I know like over the summer it was particularly hard because nothing was happening and I was stuck in my house. So I didn't write a lot of music then, but I don't want to force something. Like Bill Evans always used to say, Bill Evans would only play piano when he wanted to play piano. Like he never sat down and played when he didn't want to play. And it's good. It's good. Obviously we need to practice and be, work on skills and stuff. But I think it's good to also to be honest with yourself. And when you're really feeling inspired, to act on it. And when you're not feeling inspired, just to not act on it.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know if you guys have any follow-ups to that.
Well, agree or disagree, has some of your best work come from deadlines and maybe that work push you to work faster or prior to inspiration?
Definitely. Deadlines can be great for the speed aspect of it. Maybe not the quality aspect, but just getting it done. Definitely. So that's one area. The opposite is just how can you work when you have lots of time and making your own sort of, because with music, it's not like with math when there's a final answer. And with music, it's like whenever you feel like your song is done or your playing is done, it's done. And you have to make the decision, the informed decision when something is complete and ready to be enjoyed by the public. That's hard. It's very difficult to have that sort of judgment.
Especially without a deadline.
Without a deadline, right.
You can go after take after take after take, and especially in the digital age too, where it's so easy to just highlight everything and just press delete and then re-record. I was listening to a podcast that Vinny Caliuta, another drummer, and he was talking about the difference between the analog age in the studio and the digital age now, and how nowadays it's so easy for musicians to go in the studio and never be happy with takes that they do, and there's less of a commitment to having to stay with certain takes because it's so easy to just restart different takes. So I thought that was an interesting point he made.
Totally. Yeah, that's a different, we're in a completely different environment for recording music. Like now we have the ability to make things as perfect as we want, which is great, but it also takes away from just the being in the moment aspect of it and being okay with making mistakes, which was very hard for us, myself included, very hard to make mistakes nowadays and not feel like you're an awful human being.
Yeah, there was another type of recording, I forget the name of it, but Vinny talked about when he did this recording. I forget who he did it with, but it's this recording technique where they record the whole album at once. So you have to play straight through. And he gave this funny story about how Jaco Pastorius, like they were getting right through the end of the album, and Jaco Pastorius, I think he was manic depressed, and he just like barged into the studio as they were ending it, and he was like doing like I don't know what he was making some sort of commotion, and they had to restart the whole album because of that. But yeah, just recording techniques like that definitely are much less prevalent nowadays. I mean, now there's MIDI and you can really edit. Going back to what you said though about the creative process, I'm curious about like more about your thoughts about deadlines and how do you set goals for yourself, because I find and I don't think I'm alone, but finding self-discipline many times can be tricky, especially keeping up with it for long-term goals. So what are some tactics that you do?
Yeah, I definitely agree that having a lot of things upon which we have to work on to, for the player playing a gig, like doing this music, or we have this school thing. That's great. Like that's really helpful to me. But it is hard. Like I know over the summer it was hard for me to like make deadlines for myself, and I sort of also embrace it at the same time because it just let me have more freedom in what I was practicing, and it let me just kind of get really deep into one thing without an expectation of reward coming out of it, or like something coming out, just getting deep into something and being okay with the search, right? Without maybe finding anything, just the process of searching, which along the way you find little things. But I would advocate for smaller goals, which as a collective can lead to a bigger goal of wanting to work on harmony, or wanting to work on groove, or wanting to work on your writing. Just work on small kind of things that work on individual skills.
I mean, that kind of goes back to like the two question types, like how can I get from an F7 chord to a B flat?
Right.
It's the very specific thing
Right.
compared to how can I develop jazz language. It's
exactly.
It's very hard to answer that question, and there's many ways to get there, but yeah, I think that I totally agree with that approach of
definitely
small chunks, and
yeah,
a lot easier that way.
Yeah.
A short add-on to the discussion about discipline. I'll keep it concise as I can. I'm just thinking about the idea of momentum and kind of identity, because if you're not a piano player, what are the odds that you just feel like playing the piano today? There's next to nothing. You might have some midlife crisis and you're like, I feel so inspired to pick up the piano. But that's not really happening. It's because you identify, you're a piano player, that's what you do. You're an author, that's what you do. You write, and that's kind of what you do. Is once you have that identity, it's much more likely that you're going to feel like doing it on any given day. If you're not somebody who exercises and you identify as fat, you're just never going to go out to the gym. But if you believe and see yourself as an active person, then that's what you'll do. And then you do it once and you have momentum, and it becomes something you do all the time. Because
that's great, Austin.
This is a big problem for me, because I have so many other interests. Like sometimes I don't even see myself as a saxophone player. Like I might see myself as an entrepreneur, or like a blogger, or like a whatever. And this happens in the heart of COVID, where I was like, Mike knows because we were talking, I hardly played saxophone for like 3 months. And I never felt like doing it because I lost the momentum and I lost the identity. But slowly as I got back to school and people started hitting me up to play sessions and I was doing recordings for people, all of a sudden I gained it back and I got the momentum. But it was a process.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Right. But let's take it out here. We'll do our 90-second quick fire round, and then we'll let Joe go. You have a timer, or I can start one.
Oh, I don't have my phone.
I got it.
Yeah, can you? Okay.
Wait. So we do just like a quick yes or no type of, or short answer type of thing at the end. Mike, I'm gonna start it.
Okay.
With you. Okay.
Oh, okay.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is the ultimate question?
What?
What is the meaning of living?
What is your go-to Wawa order?
Buffalo chicken cheesesteak.
Wow.
What is your most concise answer to what is the meaning of living?
Connecting with other people.
Did you name your dog after a jazz standard? Yes or no?
Yes.
What's your dog's name?
Stella.
Eagles or 76ers?
Sixers, and I'm about to go watch the game after this.
Killing.
They're playing the Lakers.
What's your favorite food?
I just made some chicken and rice, so that's currently what my favorite food is.
Chicken and rice. How do you like your Joe?
With milk and caramel.
What's your favorite coffee shop?
Don't have an answer for that.
What is
I like all of them.
what is the worst class you've ever taken?
Oh. I took this class called Jazz and American Culture, and it was awful. It sounds great, but it was not good.
All right. There you have it. This has been a Brave Sound podcast with the brilliant Joe Block. Check out his concert this Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern. It'll be Joe Block's trio featuring Christain McGhee and Jack Aylor. And yeah, the link for the tickets, they're pay what you can. You can find them in the description below. Thank you so much for being engaged and for the awesome questions. And I wish you guys all a beautiful night. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, guys.